Growing up, my dad built up a pretty good photo collection for himself. Hanging on the walls of our home were things like Buzz Aldrin walking on the surface of the moon, a couple different pictures from Jesse Alexander, including this one of Fangio at Monaco and this one of Jim Clark at Spa. There was Ansel Adams' Jeffrey Pines, and Eccentric Crank by Gordon Osmondson. And hanging in our dining room were two photos that kind of represented our family. My stepbrother and I were represented by two Amish boys by George Tice, and my dad and stepmom were represented by Two Leaves by Ruth Bernhard. I am sure that these many photos hanging around the house have influenced me as a photographer and my particular style. None of these photos are the grand landscapes that I most like taking pictures of, but I am sure that in many ways I have been influenced, whether I realize it or not. Today I'm going to try to recreate one of these photos. I'm going to try to recreate Two Leaves by Ruth Bernhard and see if I can learn something by recreating what she did. Now, I probably won't make as good a photo as she did. Mine will not be a masterpiece simply because it's derivative, even if I could achieve what she did technically. But I'm going to try to do it anyway and see what I can learn from her. So let's head out to the garage where I've set up a little impromptu studio and see what we can make. So I went around the corner and where we have a couple of magnolia trees, and I got two leaves. I'm going to try to take a picture of them today. So along with the leaves, I have obviously my camera, my tripod, a light. If you look at Two Leaves, it looks like it was shot with a single light, harsh from the side. So we're going to try just using one light. I have some clips to hold everything together and some wax canvas that I have left over from a bag I made last year that I'm going to use as the backdrop. Let's get ourselves set up and see how this works. So here we are, all set up. I have my camera here on its tripod. One of the things I love about this three-legged thing tripod is the ability to flip it over and get the camera itself so low to the surface or the ground, tabletop, whatever I'm resting my tripod on. I have the leaves set up how I think I want them. I have a copy of the photo right here on my iPad that I've been using as a reference. But hopefully, these leaves aren't exactly the same as the ones in the photos. I couldn't find leaves that folded the way that they do in the photo. But I think I got something pretty close. I have my light set up over here, shining across the leaves this way. The light is at the same level as the leaves at a perpendicular line from my camera. So it's shining directly sideways on the leaves and right at the same level as everything. And here in the background, I have my wax canvas to use as a backdrop. Hopefully these lines, these folds don't show up. I tried to move the leaves off of the wax canvas quite a ways, and I'm going to be using a pretty shallow depth of field to try to just keep the leaves in focus and blur the background a little bit. I really just want this to disappear into the backdrop. So now I have everything exactly where I want it. I have the leaves positioned in the frame, I think how I want them. I have my settings dialed in on the camera itself, my focus, my field of view, and all the exposure settings. So now I need to turn off all these lights that I'm using to film the video. So I just get this one light onto the leaves themselves. So let's go ahead and turn those off. All right, so here in my garage, there's a couple lights in the garage door. So there's still some ambient light, but here on the leaves themselves, they're really only being illuminated by this one light. It's one of the reasons why I position things this way, so the backdrop would act as a shade from the lights coming in from the garage door. So let's double check here that the exposure settings are still good now that we've turned off all these lights. All right, that looks pretty good. So let's take this photo. Because this is fairly low light, I'm using a 4-second exposure, ISO 100. And right now I'm at f9, but I think I'm gonna close that down. I took this first photo and you can see too much detail in the backdrop. So I'm gonna close or open that up a little bit to let in more light and blur the background just a little bit more. So I don't wanna go all the way down to f2.8 or anything, because I want both leaves, the entirety of the leaves, still to be in focus. So let's open it up just a little bit. I'm going to go to 5.6, see how that looks. So I'm at 5.6 for 1 second. Let's try it out. So we're still getting a little bit too much detail on the background. I think one of the things is it's getting too much light. So we're going to add a temporary barn door to this light to try to guide the light and keep it off of the background a little bit more. So let's turn the lights back on for a moment and get that done. All right, so I'm going to go just grab a cardboard box and a roll of tape, and we're going to make ourselves a barn door. All right, so we got our barn door set up. It's just a flap of cardboard taped to the back of the light and to the tabletop. So now we're getting a lot less light coming across our backdrop, and hopefully it will decrease how visible these wrinkles are, because we're getting quite a bit of highlights and shadows because of those wrinkles. If this doesn't work, I'm going to have to take this down and go upstairs and iron it to make it flat. But let's see if this works. So let's turn the lights back off and try taking this photo again. All right, so the backdrop is definitely much darker now. So let's try this. I'm just going to use the same settings we had before and take a photo. Once again, that was 1 second. So it seems like adding this barn door to the light to take some light off of the background worked really well. The background is much darker now. I think there's still some detail there. Judging by the histogram, we're not totally pitch black, but I think this will work pretty well. I'm going to take some extra photos just because I have everything set up and adjust the aperture and shutter speed just a little bit. I might even back up the light slightly, see how that affects the photo. But let's try to do a few things and see how well we can recreate this photo. After playing with this quite a bit, I think I've gotten something I really like. So you saw the pictures from last night, and let me tell you, I was not happy with what I ended up with. The background was just too black. There was no detail there, and so when I tried to lift the blacks just a little bit, the background stayed black, black, black. I even tried to take it into Photoshop and adjust the the black point a little bit to bring it up and clip the black, but it didn't help the image at all. So I'm going to do a couple things, three things I have planned to do this morning to try to improve this photo. First, I'm going to iron my backdrop to remove these wrinkles a little bit. This is just a piece of cloth. It's not a real backdrop. It's wrinkly. I'm going to iron it. Second, I'm going to move it back further so I can put some light onto it and it'll stay out of focus. And third, I'm going to remove the barn door that I created out of this piece of cardboard. So I think by pushing the backdrop back and removing the barn door, we'll get some light onto the backdrop, but it won't be coming at such a harsh angle across the backdrop. So even if there are still some wrinkles left, it won't cast shadows as the light comes across it. We'll get the light a little bit more head-on, direct, and it'll cut down on the shadows. So we're going to try that. As you can see, I took down my camera and my tripod last night. I was taking some other photos, so I'm going to have to set everything back up again, get everything all dialed in. But give me a couple of minutes and I'm going to go and make these changes that I think I need to make. All right, so here we are back. I have made these changes. I've pushed the backdrop back, I've ironed it, and I've removed the barn door from the light. So we're gonna flip this on and turn off all these other lights. So let's get this one on first. So that one's on. Let's turn off all the other ones and let's get the camera set up first, I guess. All right, so we have this all set up. The backdrop has been pushed back and ironed. The barn door has been taken off of the light. I've actually moved the light and the leaves right to the edge of the table, so I don't get the edge of the table in the bottom of the frame at all. And I have the camera set up here at just about 50 millimeters focused on the leaves. So we're going to turn off the lights for the video. So we're going to do that now and try this photo again. The lights are off. So we still have some ambient light coming in from the garage windows. So we're taking this at 3.2 seconds, f11, ISO 100. Hopefully this looks good. I'm a little worried we're still not getting enough light on the backdrop. So I have a light over here that I was using to illuminate me a little bit, but actually it's pointed pretty well at the backdrop. It's far enough away that it should just cast a little bit of light. So I'm going to turn that one on and see how that works. So I'm going to leave the exposure how I had it because I think the leaves were well exposed, and hopefully this extra light will pick up on the backdrop. The histogram is looking much better, but let's make a couple small adjustments to the way the leaves are positioned and to the exposure levels. All right, we've made some adjustments to the way the leaves are positioned. I've refocused, and let's try this again. All right, I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go take it onto the computer and see how it looks. So here we are back at the computer. I've imported the files into Lightroom and I've had a chance to edit them. And I've got to say I like them a lot more than I liked the first day's images. The background has a little bit more light on it, so it is not just black. It has some tones of gray. However, I still had to bring it into Photoshop. Normally I don't use Photoshop on any of my images. I'll do all my editing just in Lightroom. But on this one, I needed Photoshop. I needed to treat the background differently than I treated the leaves. And I had to raise the tones on the background just a little bit so they would be a little bit more gray and not so black. I also, on the leaves themselves, brought down some of the highlights so we didn't have a hot spot on the very side of the leaf where the light was coming in. Now, Ruth Bernhard didn't have these tools to be able to expose the background differently than the leaves, or to change the exposures on the background versus the leaves in post-processing. She was able to, when printing her film, to be able to make some changes to dodge and burn a little bit, but this would be a very hard modification to make if you were shooting on film. So I am really happy with what I ended up with. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, hit that like button. I try to bring you new videos every Tuesday and Friday. So if you want to see what I'm doing next, hit that subscribe button. Ring that little bell if you want notifications. I learned a ton from this process of creating this or recreating this image, and I hope you did too. So hit that like button, and we will see you again next week for another video. Until then, have a great day.